Hey, Ness. Can you hear me? Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for jumping on. I'm just about to share my screen and start the presentation. All right, beautiful. Let's get straight into it. And then if anyone has any calls, please let me know. And we can definitely go over those ones at the end or throughout the presentation as well. So let's go. All right, beautiful. So welcome back to our second seminar of Understanding the Gut. Today, the basis of this seminar is formed on a few questions that we had coming off the first one. So I just want to put it out there that if anyone has any other questions, even after the seminar is finished, it sort of pops into their head and they really want to understand it on a different level, please message me or Ness, and that will form the basis of the seminar in a fortnight's time. All right, beautiful. So, firstly, let's start off with answering your questions. There were a lot of questions in regards to the iron panel. So, we always see this full iron panel when we get a blood test done. And these names may look familiar to you. So, you've got serum iron, you have ferritin, and you have transferrin saturation percentage. So, I just wanted to put a little bit of information in regards to what these are actually telling us. So firstly, as a little example, we have iron. So iron or serum iron, it will say either or, measures the iron bound to proteins within the blood. So it's just looking at iron that is primarily just in the blood. Okay. Then we have something called ferritin. Now, this is a storage protein for iron in the body. So when iron moves from the blood to be stored in cells or tissues, it will be actually stored within a protein called ferritin. So think of ferritin as like a little capsule and iron sits inside it to be stored. Just gonna make sure you can hear me there. Then we have transferrin saturation percentage. So think of it as how much iron is actually bound to these transporters. So it's not more is better. We do have a percentage that we like it to be sitting around. So, within that 30 to 35%, if you're slightly below or over, it doesn't mean good or bad. Again, we look at everything together. We look at nothing in isolation. So it's talking about how much of this iron is actually bound to these transporters. Like I said, around that 30 to 35% mark is where we want to see it. But again, if it's slightly below or slightly above, it doesn't mean, good or bad. We don't look at things like that. We look at things with context, and we always look at things with other markers as well. So let's go into a bit more detail in regards to what this actually shows us. So how can this tie into gut health? So this is, I think, a big question because a lot of people sort of ask, if ferritin is high or low, how can it show inflammation? How does that even tie into gut health? So high ferritin can help us pinpoint underlying inflammation. Now, I have some notes next to me because I don't want to go and just go on a tangent. I want to make sure that I keep this quite concise so that you guys can understand it, really, really well. So pretty much like I mentioned, ferritin is the protein, or you can call it like a vesicle that stores the iron. Now, when we have too much iron in the blood, this can act as an acute reactant. Okay. And what that means is it can actually cause damage to tissues or cells. So when we have inflammation present now, for whatever the reason may be, whether it's stress-induced, whether it is, there's something else underlying going on, but when we have inflammation, it starts to cause ferritin to increase. And that's because we do not want to have too much free iron in the body. Okay, like I said, too much free iron can actually cause more damage. Okay, so by increasing the ferritin production, that means that more iron can then be stored. Okay, so this can actually sort of mask an iron deficiency because the ferritin levels may not actually be the most accurate, especially in an environment that is inflamed. But yeah, so it's pretty much trying to store more iron away. So it can show that we have inflammation, maybe infection, maybe you've been really unwell, or maybe just for some other reason, the environment, so your body is experiencing a lot of inflammation because you've got gastrointestinal symptoms, or there's some permeability there, or whatever it may be. So as I said, so this includes inflammation within the gastrointestinal tract, any inflammation in the body. Now, low ferritin, on the other hand, can actually indicate poor absorption of iron. So poor absorption, poor utilization of iron. I'm just beautiful. Sorry, just checking something. So poor absorption can be due to multiple reasons. So I've listed 4 main reasons here, and we'll definitely go through them. So intestinal permeability. So that's when the cells of your intestines, pretty much, usually they're closely linked together. And the reason being is because we don't want things to just move through into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there. So whether that's like really small food particles, whether that's pathogens that have entered or bacteria that have entered the body, we don't want things just to move through. So if we're losing particles through intestinal permeability, that means there's less that actually can be absorbed and utilized. Therefore, we can see low ferritin, etc. Low stomach acid, insufficient enzymes, they tie in together because what happens there is we get poor absorption, we get poor mobilization of iron, and therefore, we obviously are seeing then if we have poor absorption and sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted now, poor absorption or mobilization, then we cannot obviously use that. And then deficiencies in cofactors, which are required for iron absorption. So we know that, consuming vitamin C with our iron source helps with absorption. We have other factors like vitamin A, our B vitamins, B9, B12, B6, and we also have copper. So all these together really helpful for absorption, mobilization, transport. Okay, now I want to touch base around what actually is inflammation. So, we hear a lot of things on social media saying that, inflammation is bad, or lower inflammation, lower. But we have to understand that inflammation is there for a reason. Everything that happens in the body is so smart. It's a machine. It is there for a reason. So inflammation is actually your body's normal response to an injury, to infection, whether that's a physical wound, whether that's bacteria entering your body, when it's just trying to heal. So it's starting that healing process. And without inflammation, we're not going to heal. So we don't want to eliminate it altogether because, again, what it does for us is it allows for increased blood flow. And that's why if you ever cut yourself, let's say you get a paper cut, and you touch it and it's quite sore, it's quite red, it's quite inflamed. Sometimes you will get a bit of pus coming out. Okay, this is because you have increased blood flow, you have increased white blood cells coming to that area because it's cleaning up any debris, it's cleaning up any infection, and it's getting rid of whatever, or it's fighting against whatever is going on. Okay, it's also delivering nutrients, okay, oxygen, really, really important, because without all of those, we cannot heal. And if we can't heal, that's a problem in itself. So we do not want to eliminate inflammation altogether, but where it becomes an issue is because when it stays elevated, this leads to chronic inflammation, and this can cause other issues in itself. Okay, so really specific now, but inflammation and the gut. So we must understand that when we talk about intestinal homeostasis, now when we say homeostasis, we just mean things are balanced, things are in a nice position, as they should be. And intestinal, that's your intestines. So it's made up of three main components. So you've got a healthy and balanced microbiome. So as we went over last week, the microbiome is those microorganisms that sit within your large intestine that produce products to allow our gut to flourish. Healthy intestinal epithelium, just the lining of your intestines, and a regulated immune system. Because again, as we went over last week, we have 70 to 80% of our immune system actually within our gut. Therefore, we want all these things sitting at homeostasis or within a balanced or in balance, so that we can have things obviously operating as they should. But where we see disruptions in each of these pillars is when we have excess inflammation. So that chronic inflammation that we spoke about. So chronic just means like long term. When something stays elevated for a long time, it becomes chronic because it's no longer an acute problem, over a certain period of time. It's become a problem that's just continuing. Okay. And then of course, when we have something that is disrupting this homeostasis over a long period of time, that your gut is not going to function optimally. I mean, it couldn't, it's impossible. So then this would lead to things such as affecting nutrient digestion, absorption. This can then lead to some of those digestive symptoms that, if anyone has ever experienced IBS, so irritable bowel syndrome, the bloating, the cramping, the intense pain after you've eaten something, or even in between long periods without eating. Inflammation can disturb the physical barrier, which protects the intestinal lumen. So the lumen just means the inside part of your intestine. So I put this in quotation marks because I was reading a study when putting these slides together. I always like to fact check and make sure that I put everything out that's proper. So it said, so your intestinal lumen, the most extended interface between the internal body and the external environment. So pretty much it's when there's disruption to that physical barrier between the inside of the so the internal body, it's talking about the inside of your intestines, and the external environment. This can cause a lot of issues. It can exacerbate inflammation, exacerbate symptoms, and things can be moving through that should not be. Like I said, if we have bacteria moving through, then this creates other problems that we need to address. And can cause an imbalance in microbiome. So when we have an imbalance in the microorganisms in our gut, it's called dysbiosis. So it's dysregulated, out of balance. Maybe you've got too much of the bad bacteria in comparison to the good bacteria, to put it just quite basically. Now, if there is one thing to take away from today, this is a bit of a, I guess, an all-rounder sort of what's called diagram here, but everything is interconnected. So what I'm trying to say is, when I say everything is interconnected, as we can see, we have these factors here, determinants, we can call them. So environment, alcohol, infection, an unhealthy diet, stress, whether that's work, financial, personal, drugs, again, the illicit stuff, but also medication, just normal medication that are prescribed for many different reasons. Genetics plays a part, and lifestyle, whether you exercise, where you live, do you live in an environment where there's lots of pollution, etc. And that can cause changes to your body. And it is really interesting. Like, there's lots of studies that have been done with people who live in different areas of different demographics, different genetic makeup, etc., and looking into their gut microbiome. Because as we spoke about last week, your gut and your brain are connected, okay, directly via the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that runs from one end to the other. Okay, so there will be connection between, what's going on up here and your gut and all of these determinants as well. And it will affect whether you have dysbiosis, so that's that imbalance in good and bad bacteria, whether you have eubiosis, so that's when everything's balanced and everything is where it should be, or whether you have leaky gut syndrome. So again, as I sort of explained, it's when these junctions between the cells allow things to move through. So as you can see, this is the intestinal lumen inside your intestine, and then that arrow going downwards is things moving through that probably shouldn't be. And then, of course, this can cause other issues, not to scare you, but some of the things that can come from these things. So we can see diabetes, psoriasis, that's the liver there, neurodegenerative diseases, inflammatory bowel disease, which is different to IBS. That's when you're categorizing different diseases there. Like ulcerative colitis. You've got atherosclerosis, cardiovascular diseases, which again ties into each other. I did put a little link down the bottom there. If you use the PMC and the number, if you want to look over any of this study where I actually got this diagram from, then you are more than welcome to. I'm just going to get out of here and jump back in here. But I just wanted to say, thank you so much for joining. As always, if you have any questions or anything sort of pops up where you're like, you know what, actually, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. If you have any questions where you want the next seminar to sort of touch base on, then please just let me know. And I use that as a base to create the next PowerPoint and the next lot of information that I present to you guys. But thank you for anyone who has watched this. Again, if you have further questions, myself and Ness are always happy to answer those. Chuck them in your check-in, chuck them in your chat box, and we'll get back to you. Hopefully this is interesting too. I definitely find this interesting. So happy to go into lots of detail because it's very, very important. There's always new research coming out, and that's something that I will try to share with you guys a lot more. You can, if anyone's ever interested, you can go on something called PubMed, and every single week there's research and papers that get posted. So I will try to do my best to provide you with that, but that's a good source for you guys if anyone likes reading at night to sort of clock off and think about something different other than work and life. Apart from that, we will upload this recording, and happy Thursday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.